What is good, people? Welcome back to Off-Field Antics, and it is the first episode of that FPL show 2022-23. I just can't wait now for the season to start. Last week we had a teaser with the Community Shield, still had some pre-season games, and then the EFL kicked off. And for me, I really enjoyed it, but I'm just buzzing now for this weekend coming up. Fantasy is back as well, and in this show we're going to be talking all things fantasy. We're joined by, I guess you could say, top 100k player, is it, Rod?
Top 100k, top 75k if we're going to narrow it down even more, top 62k if we're going to narrow it down some more.
Yes, mate. Yeah, it's good to see you, Rod. I know you're buzzing as well for FPL.
As always, mate. Like, new season is upon us. We're 4 days away from the first game. Drafts have been made, drafts have been tinkered with, but ready to get started, mate. And I'm just looking forward to the season because then the draft is locked in and you can't tinker anymore, which is good and bad, but I'm looking forward. Friday we got Arsenal Palace, so happy days.
Yeah, I can't wait for Friday. It's going to be pretty nuts. But I guess we should start off with our teams at this moment in time. Here is my squad. I feel like I've got a really solid, two premium assets or squad right now. The Threemium is tempting me though, Rod, because I've made a Threemium and I think it's really strong. I think you're going to have to use the first wildcard pretty early anyway. And I feel like with the Threemium, maybe you get more advantages by doing that. However, this is the squad I'm most likely leaning towards right now. I feel like, I'm kind of following a sort of template of which is kind of the meta right now. I guess what people are kind of predicting. I've got Trent, of course, Salah, the Obs and Jesus, who seems to be in everyone's teams. For me, though, I'm looking for a couple options which I think can separate me from the pack. I've gone with Trippier, who I didn't see as much as I thought I was. I think at 5 million, and you look at Newcastle's fixtures, he's a really good asset considering he's on set pieces. Leon Bailey, who's had an absolutely, brilliant pre-season so far with Aston Villa. Saw him against United and I thought he looked superb when he came on. For me, at 5 mil, once again, I feel like he's a great option to have in that midfield. I feel my bench is strong. I've got 3 playing sort of players and, for the minimum value, so I'm happy with that. Saka's the one I'm kind of questioning in my midfield. I'm not too sure if maybe I should, look at one of the other 8 million sort of prospects. I love James Maddison at the moment. I think he's going to be a really good pick. But with Newcastle looking to go in for him, apparently bidding 50 million, I'm not sure what sort of the situation is going to be around him. You've got everyone at that 8 million price point. You've got, the likes of Foden. You can downgrade then to Sancho and Grealish as well. So I'm really stuck, Rod. But, what's your first kind of thoughts on my team so far?
It's hard because you sent me obviously the Threemium, which I was a big fan of, and the team you've currently got. I like it. Saka, he got 2 the other day. He's had a good pre-season also. Jesus getting a hat-trick. Bailey, tremendous pre-season. Saka, it's interesting because at that 8 million point, there's a lot of players even below that point that you could bring in. So that one's probably my only little question, but that's more of a personal opinion. Which we saw Ronaldo did start yesterday, or came on, I'm not too sure. Well, regardless, he played. So Martial, maybe position's compromised, but I was saying this to my friend that I think Ronaldo doesn't want to be there. Martial's been playing well, and obviously Martial can also play on the wing, which isn't his preferred position, but he can regardless. But I like it, mate. Obviously, Captain Salah, first game of the season. I think everyone's going to be doing that. Yeah, I think you have to. Diaz and Cancelo, I really like. I think City are going to keep the most clean sheets this year. Trippier, great differential option. Haven't really seen him featured in too many teams. Ramsdale was also my question. I think there's lots of players at that 5 million mark, but yeah, obviously I know you like Ramsdale there fixture wise, hence why I've got Ben White into my team, which we'll get onto shortly.
Yeah, I've got the triple up with Arsenal.
The triple up? Oh yeah, I've got the triple up.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have a good season. I'm not too sure how good of a season, but obviously they've got a lot of players that can play those attacking roles now, so it's going to be interesting to see how they do operate. I think the burden is now going to be taken off Saka, where he carried it for a large part of last season, playing almost every game.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and for me, like the triple up with Arsenal, it's not because I believe they're like this great team or anything like that. I just love their fixtures and the form they've been in pre-season. I feel like they're going to start pretty hot. I think Crystal Palace though is a game which a lot of people are putting the Arsenal players in, but they're not actually thinking about the difficulty of the task. To go away to Crystal Palace and pick up a
That's,
result.
that's a
Um,
hard.
I'm not too sure about the clean sheet, but when you look at Ramsdale's sort of, fixtures after that, I just, I really like the run of games they got. They got a couple of tough ones, but they're kind of in between. You look at the Leicester game could be difficult, but then Bournemouth, Fulham, Villa, United, but then Everton and Brentford before they get Tottenham, Liverpool, and Leeds. So for me, I love that sort of pick rod. So I think we should probably take a look at your team. Here's the freemium I created, which I am kind of tempted by first. It's kind of heavy in terms of, you got Son, Salah, and Haaland. The only thing I might change if I was to change the freemium is maybe go Kane. I think Kane at, zero point 0.5 cheaper than Son. That 0.5 is actually like huge without even noticing it. I think Rashford's a brilliant pickup at 6.5. I don't think he's in the best form, I think he's going to start. The form, I don't know what sort of level he's going to be playing at, but all I know is he scores goals, and I just feel like that's going to happen again. But that's the freemium I've gone with, Rod. Let's take a look at your team for the start of the season. Do you want to talk us through it, then?
So I'm happy with it. I think we've still got 3-4 days before the season starts, or 4 days to be precise. I think there could be one or two changes to it. Bailey's not fully locked, but he has had a fantastic pre-season, scoring again on Saturday. I think he does start the first couple. First couple being Bournemouth and Everton, where he's got a good record at Everton, scoring and assisting last year. Jesus, I think he's going to increase in price after the deadline, purely because of his ownership. And then Melia, I like Melia. The first fixtures are Wolves, Southampton, Chelsea, Brighton, Everton. So there are some good fixtures in there. And then after that, Brentford and Forest. And there's a 4.5 million keeper. It's kind of a set and forget spot. He could change to maybe Raya, who their defence was quite good last year. And I'm not opposed to Raya, to be completely honest with you. But bar that, I think I'm pretty locked. But the more I'm on my fantasy, the more I kind of look into it. And looking at Raya's fixtures now, I mean, after the first two, their fixtures are fairly good in Fulham, Everton, Palace, Leeds. So Melia could be Raya. But bar that, I'm operating a 4-4-2 for the first day of the season, Captain Salah, and I have got Kane, which it could be Haaland, and I would not mind having Haaland for that second game.
Yeah, where that's what I'm going to be doing 100%.
I've got a thing in my head. Does Haaland for West Ham and Bournemouth, looking at their fixtures after, they are pretty fantastic, actually. As we speak, I am going to change Kane to Haaland. But yeah, I think Freeman's a difficult one to keep the balance right. I think obviously the midfield and attack's very good, but then the rest of the team does suffer. Whereas I think people could, even if they are at a 3-man at the moment, they could go back down to a 2-man once they see how people play and things like that. So it's going to be an exciting season. And last year, the players who kicked off really well were Bruno, Salah, Benrahma, Mikel Antonio, and it's going to be interesting to see the gems this year. I think obviously we talked about Samaka earlier last week. He could be an option for West Ham if he kicks off well, and I think there are going to be some gems which people are going to want to get in the team.
Yeah, I think some of the old faithfuls are really being overlooked. For me, I think one of the best value strikers right now is probably Callum Wilson. I think you look at the fixtures Newcastle have, and the fact that he is still their number 9. I think with the sort of deals they've done this season, they're already going to be a better side going forward. And you've got to think if they can get James Maddison from Leicester, that's another creative piece, which is only going to create more chances for him. I also like Undav up front for Brighton.
Yeah.
He's 5.5 million. He's coming off a crazy goal scoring season in, I think it was the Belgian league. The German striker, he's still I think he's younger than 25 still. So I think he's a brilliant option in terms of he's prime time, and I think Brighton are really looking to move on from Malpe, who, despite being a good player in my opinion, really hasn't hit the numbers they kind of want. So there's a couple strikers I really like, and after watching the Community Shield on Saturday, I love the pick of Darwin Nunes. It's just, is he going to start? I think he's going to get game time no matter what. And for me, it's not that I think he's the most clinical sort of finisher, or he's even like a good finisher in that sort of way. I just think he's such a handful. And with the amount of sort of chances Liverpool create, he's a great option at 9 mil.
I wish it was the same price as Jesus, because I do think it would be more evenly split. Maybe the majority would be with Nunes, because they are going to keep creating chances like they always do, and he's more than likely going to finish them. So it's going to be an interesting battle of strikers, because last year they were pretty non-existent. I think most people are in one striker formations because no one was really that good consistently throughout the season. Obviously, Antonio started well, then he got to Christmas and he tapered off quite quickly, and then Kane didn't really kick off until around Christmas. So it was a mixed bag of strikers. There wasn't really any outstanding choices, but this year obviously we've got Haaland, Kane, Nunes, Jesus, and a load of new additions. So it's going to be interesting.
For me, I honestly I see Saka and Martial, and I could get rid of both and bring in someone like a Nunes and, sort something out in the midfield. But I really feel like Martial's going to be an underrated pick. I really do see him starting the season for United. I think out of all United's players, I'd say that Sancho and Martial have really looked the sharpest in pre-season. You're talking about Ronaldo coming in on Saturday. He played 45 minutes before leaving the game and going home. But for me, I just think Martial's going to start. I've seen things with United which are really questionable in terms of sometimes the performance has been dog shit. But then there's other times where we play more of a 4-3-3, and like we did on the weekend with Eriksen and Donny, alongside James Garner. And I think this United team could be really good going forward in terms of chances created. For me, the midfield's an interesting one as well, just because I feel like there are some really good value sort of players in there. But because you got to put Salah in there, and ideally you want an 8 million sort of asset so you can downgrade to, whichever sort of 8 million asset is in there. It just doesn't give you too much breathing room and too much space to really bring in some of those players. It's still quite interesting. I find some of the teams I'm seeing on Twitter, you're seeing all different sorts of things, but I think most people are going with the two premium options, and they're putting a decent squad around it, like I think both of us have.
Yeah, I think it's going to I think the 4 players which are going to be on almost everyone's side, not almost everyone, in a large majority of teams, it's going to be Cancelo, Trent, Salah, and Kane or Haaland.
Yeah,
and then going to have the differential as well. So you've gone Trippier, I've gone White, I've gone Melier, and you've gone Ramsdale, and there's going to be some differentials around there. But I think not the bulk, but 4 or 5 players people are all going to have, and then it's all about fillers and who you want, etc.
Yeah, man.
Jesus has been selected by 70% of players so far, so that already speaks volumes.
I know. I'm pretty sure Salah ownership is less.
Salah's ownership is 58.6% of all teams. Jesus is 70.2%.
I know, it's kind of crazy, and I did want to go without Salah before the Community Shield. I can't lie. I just felt like being ballsy, but I think it's ridiculous not really going with him at this point. I think you can actually put together a really good squad without Salah. Maybe look to use a Darwin Nunes and a Luis Diaz as those sort of alternatives, and have Trent still. But I just think he's still the man you got to go with, just because of, Liverpool being so strong. He's always a good option to captain when they have a great fixture. And I think if you go too premium, the switch from Kane to Haaland right now is going to be really easy. For me, I already know what transfer I'm making in game week 2. It's going to be Kane out because they've got Chelsea. I'm going to bring in Haaland just because I feel like, the fact that they're the same price, I think it's a good deal. And I think, it's an easy switch back if I want to make it. You already have to basically use the wild card pretty early because we're going to have basically an extra period of time to make free transfers with the World Cup. It's a difficult one, and that's why I've only got 2 City players in my team, because I want it to be easy to switch, if I need to bring in another City asset. The same in the midfield with Saka, if I decide to maybe go with a Foden or a Grealish. So right now it's really hard. In terms of teams who have the best sort of fixtures, what sort of teams are you looking at right now?
So I didn't actually realise City's fixtures are pretty great, and obviously because they are a very good team, even the harder fixtures, which you would have thought a bit more difficult, I don't think they're too difficult. I don't mind Arsenal's fixtures, to be completely honest. I think they're quite good, and Arsenal obviously can create a lot of chances like they did last year. So I'm kind of looking at Arsenal and City, but then I've looked at Chelsea and they've kind of got a mixed bag of fixtures.
Yeah. And
it's going to be interesting to see they're in for Cucurella now that City have pulled out because they don't want to match the price tag of Brighton are putting on. But it's going to be interesting. Does James play in that fullback? Does he play a centre-back role? Obviously, they're in for Dumfries and for Fofana, so James is FPL royalty when he plays because he puts up some big scores, but it's going to be interesting to see how they set up. And James at 6 million, it's an easy switch to, for example, say Chilwell plays, he's 5.5. Say Perisic plays, he's 5.5. So that's 6 million. It does give you buffer room. I think, how much is Diaz 6?
Yes, Diaz is 6.
He's made the switch to Diaz at 6, or say Walker consistently plays, he's at 5. So there's a lot of breathing room.
I just find Chelsea a hard team to kind of bring in assets for at the moment. I think, defensively, you look at them and you think they've got a pretty solid defence if they can, still bring in a couple of players, because they are still, I guess you could say a tad light. And that's why I think Mendy's a great pick and goal. But because of the fact I really don't rate them going into this season, I find it hard to pick them. I think going forward, any of their options in the midfield and up front are basically, null and void, just because it's so sort of, I guess you could say, they're just lacking goals. I think the defence is the way to go with Chelsea. I think you can get Chilwell and James for 6 million apiece, and if they do both end up playing as a wing back, I think they're going to be heavily involved in the Chelsea system, because you look at throughout the rest of the team and the creativity is kind of a bit weak in my opinion. I think losing Lukaku, despite it kind of being the right move, it hasn't really panned out for him because they still haven't brought in a number 9, and I don't think Sterling alone is going to be scoring an outrageous amount of goals. So I find it hard to pick some the Chelsea assets. I think you're looking at the fixtures. It's kind of a bit of a weird one. I look at United's fixtures, and the first 2 games are brilliant in terms of potential. And I've been planning a lot this year instead of like last year. I was kind of just winging it. This year, I already know, I think around, probably somewhere between 3 and 5 is where I'm going to wildcard pretty early. I think Martial might be coming out as well around then if I go in 3, just because they got Liverpool. It's so hard though, man. It's so hard. But I'm just kind of all over the fucking place, in all honesty.
Yeah, thing is, we can plan to a certain extent, and then, for example, say there's a red card early, or there's a big injury, and it kind of, say Haaland gets injured, it kind of messes up your team, because then you've got to put that money elsewhere, and like an injury or a red card can completely change the complexion of the team. And obviously we've got that extra wild card around the World Cup, which I think is going to be useful. There are some key players who aren't going to the World Cup, so that's a good little rest for them. But it's hard to plan, and obviously anything can happen. And the eye testers, we haven't really been able to apply that yet, as there hasn't really been any competitive games. I'm counting the Community Shield as quite competitive. Obviously, Salah excelled. I thought Haaland missed a few sitters.
Yeah.
Grealish was really absent. So the eye test is going to be vital, especially you've got 3 Arsenal assets. They play Friday. I'm sure you're going to be watching that closely to see if anyone.
You never back the early kickoff as well, Rod.
It's Salah.
Yeah, man. So it's hard. I was just going to ask you a question, and it's kind of slipped my mind now. But you got the chips, and I don't think you want to use them too early. Your bench boost and your triple captain. But I have seen a lot of people bench boosting for game week 1, and I kind of like it. I think it's kind of a strong move, especially with the fact you got a wild card so early. Well, you don't have to, but it's ideal to wild card pretty early this year. I think it's kind of a boss move it's so easy to move out of it. What do you think?
I think it's the worst chip in the game, so people getting rid of it early makes full sense, because I don't really think it's particularly great. The next thing is, I think most people are going to have 2 out of 4 of the players playing. So you got half your players playing. It kind of depends what your bench is looking like, and maybe if you are, say, wildcarding even like game week 3, you can afford to have like a decent bench because you're going to be changing quite quickly. But if you have one poor game week early on, it's not the end of the world. But I dropped out of the top 100k once last year. I started very well. Obviously, you either had to captain Salah or Bruno to start, which people did. Bruno did slightly outscore Salah.
Yeah, I think I captained Bruno, and I think I was top of our league for a bit at the start there last year until you kind of just run away with it.
So it's a coin flip, and I don't mind the move at all, bench boosting early. Like I said, I do think it is the worst chip, so people wanting to get rid of it makes full sense. My bench boost was horrific last year, and it's just not about overthinking it. If you see that your bench have got good fixtures, and obviously it's early in the season where we can't really predict too much, then fair enough. But obviously, I think we're going to have some surprises, that's for sure.
Yeah, I do as well. I think the more we're talking about it, I'm kind of tempted by Callum Wilson, to be honest. I think he's underrated as a striker. And there's so many options this year. The Premier League is only getting better, and the quality of players in the league is only improving. I think, unless there's anything else you want to talk about fantasy, and in terms of game week 1, we could get onto the fixtures and do our predictions.
Let's do some fixtures, man. First game week, I'm so excited. We've actually got some really sort of interesting games as well. I think looking at the City West Ham game for the opening weekend, I love that game just because the sort of quality City have, but West Ham are kind of an unknown sort of beast coming into the season. The form they showed last year was incredible, but kind of threw it all away for the Europa League. But I think Jared Bowen could have another big season, and at 8.5 in fantasy, I really like him. We're going to start off. I don't know what's going on here with our Leicester do have a game, but we'll start off with Crystal Palace versus Arsenal. It's the 8 o'clock kickoff, Rod. Like I said, I think this is actually a really tough game for Arsenal. I think you look at the signings that Crystal Palace have made this season. I think they've improved the squad. I think Zaha could be out for blood this season, in all honesty. I think a team which is more defensively strong is going to only help Palace in the long run. I think Palace could nick a goal here, but I'm hoping it's going to be something like a 2-0 Arsenal, but I doubt it. So I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal. I think Arsenal last year lost to Brentford first day. Palace, going away to Palace is a hard fixture. I think people tend to overlook the fact that Palace did very well last year. They played some nice stuff, and they did beat Arsenal last year. First game of the season, it's always tough to know what to expect. Zaha could play an absolute blinder. I do see Arsenal winning, but I see it being a very, very close game. I think Arsenal might just nick it late in the second half, so I'm going to go 2-1.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I'd love to do a bit of an acca on this, maybe. Fulham against Liverpool. I just don't see it any other way. An absolute ass whooping, and I don't know if you've seen the account on Twitter, which has like kind of recently popped up with football conspiracies, and it's like Liverpool do only play promoted sides on the first day of the season, and I feel like that's a true conspiracy. I can't remember a time when they haven't. Like last year, it was Norwich or.
They tend to play Norwich, and every time they get promoted, first game.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be the same sort of story. I'm going to go 5-0 Liverpool here. I think they go big, and I think it's a must-have Salah captain.
Salah captain 100%. I'm going to go for a more modest scoreline of 3-1. I think Fulham do score. They are at home. If it was the other way around, I'd say 3 or 4-0. But I'm going to go 3-1. I think Mitrovic does get it. I think Salah plays a blinder. And it is the early kickoff, and I do not like having a captain in the early kickoff because then it can kind of ruin the fantasy week if it doesn't go well. But never back the early kickoff unless it's Salah 3-1.
Okay. Bournemouth Villa. Let's talk about your side then, Rob, because I've seen one of your games in pre-season. I was kind of disappointed in the first half in terms of the creativity and kind of just the team in general, but the second half kind of came out with a different attitude. It was a shame when they got to see that for about 10-15 minutes with the reserves coming on, but what's your sort of thoughts on Villa coming into the season and their chances against Bournemouth in the first game?
I don't like this fixture as the first game. The last time we played Bournemouth away, first game, we got relegated that year. I think Bournemouth, they haven't really particularly strengthened their squad. Parker came out and said the squad's weak, and then when they got promoted, I think it's a hard place to go. Bournemouth, South Coast, small stadium. They're going to have a lot of 10,000 fans behind them compared to our 1,000. I would have preferred an Everton or a Leeds because obviously a team that's just been promoted, they've got something to prove, etc. I'm going to go... We played Rennes on the weekend, didn't make it easy for ourselves. We did get the win, Diego Carlos scoring the second. I'm going to go 1-1.
Oh, man. I can't wait to see your Premier League predictions when we do that video this week, because I don't feel like you're going to have Villa very high with that sort of scoreline. I'm going to go for an Aston Villa win here. I actually think... Bournemouth, they still do play good football, and I think they're going to come for you, especially at home, and I think it's going to give you really good counter-attacking opportunities. I think, in all likelihood, I think Bailey and Watkins are probably going to start, maybe in the diamond or in a narrow 4, sort of 4-3-3. And I just think that gives Bournemouth problems. I'm going to go with a 2-0 Aston Villa win here. I do expect Villa to kind of, last year they did have good moments and good spells, but ultimately a really disappointing season in terms of the league table. I do expect you to have a higher finish this year, so I think you're going to start off with a big win against Bournemouth. Moving on now to Leeds against Wolves. I think this game is kind of a bit of a weird one because... I think Leeds are still going to probably look to be a bit more of an attacking side. I think, in pre-season, we've seen the likes of Jack Harrison play at left back, which I think is a brilliant sort of move for him. And Wolves, I still think they're a bit stale. They haven't got Raul Jimenez, an injury. I think he's out for 3 months. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with 1-1. I just think both teams are kind of meh, in all honesty.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. Wolves, they do play quite defensive football. Leeds, I think, are going to be a bit more defensively resolute this year. They are at home, and that Ellen Road crowd, when it's going, it is absolutely bouncing and buzzing in there. I think they start off with a win. I'm going to go 2-1 Leeds.
Ooh, okay.
Because they're at home.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, it's tough for Wolves because they do play defensive football, but they are actually a really good defensive team in that sense, playing it that way. It's just the options they've got on the attack. They're not very good in terms of they don't really have a proper number 9. I think Neto's a great pick in fantasy at 5.5 million because he's going to probably be their main sort of outlet for goals early on this season. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Newcastle against Forest. I love this game. I think Forest are I think they could still have a good season. I think a lot of people are touting them for relegation, but I think with the signings they're making and still looking to bring players in, I think they could be strong this year. I think Newcastle, though, I think they're going to be expected to make the leap up, considering they've spent more money and with the owners and the ambition of the club now. I just think Forest is going to be a tough team to play at the start, but I think if Newcastle play with the back five still, I think it will make it hard for Forest to really utilise the wings. So I'm gonna go with a Newcastle win here. I'm gonna go 3-1 Newcastle.
I also like this fixture. Historic. I personally think it should have been on TV. Two historic clubs, and two clubs which I think are going to put on a good show. I think Forest, obviously, they've had a huge squad overhaul. I think they've signed 12, 13 players, which was needed, completely needed. Newcastle, they've strengthened a few players. I think Newcastle fans want a few more signings. But it's a gradual process, and being at home, St James's Park is going to be bouncing, especially the first day. People are expecting Newcastle to have a far better season, which I think will be the case. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Newcastle.
Yeah, I do like sort of both teams scoring, but Newcastle win pretty convincingly as a result. I think Spurs versus Southampton, the next game is... I still don't rate some of the business Southampton has done. I think it's a lot better than last year where they were really dry. I just don't think Hasenhüttl's the kind of guy to take them forward. I think the 4-4-2 is outdated, so it'd be nice to see him maybe even look to start in a free. I know Lavia is a player who a lot of people are kind of banking on getting some game time in FPL at 4.5 million in the midfield, and I don't really see him getting in the team straight away if they are going 4-4-2 because he's so reliant on Romu and James Ward-Prowse. So it's an interesting one. I just think Spurs have way too much for him. I think Spurs get a clean sheet here and a win. I'll probably go 3-0 Spurs at home. I think there's going to be quite a few goals the opening weekend. I think Kane scores here and he starts the season off in style, despite me having my sort of reservations about him in terms of starting the season slow. It would be kind of interesting to see if he takes kind of the lead because Son had to carry a lot of last year, and I think with the upgrade Spurs have made, I think they're going to make a good start.
I completely agree with you. I think Spurs are going to make a strong start. I think what you said about Lavia, I don't think that's fully correct. I do think he's going to start. Southampton don't tend to spend money that often, and obviously they spend a bit of money on him, so I think he does come in quite soon.
I just think he's still only 18, 19, right?
He is young.
And the fact that they do have that experienced midfield, I still think it's kind of, unless they change to a different formation, which I don't think they will, I don't see him starting, but each to their own, I think.
I do think Spurs win, them being at home. Obviously, the Conte effect is probably still going to be in full effect. I'm going to go Spurs 2-1.
2-1, okay. Everton, it'd also be good, just before we move on, I think the Mara, the new striker for Southampton, I think he could be a good one to watch because I think they've been kind of missing that sort of presence at number 9 for a while now. Looked to have Armstrong last year, he didn't really kick on, same with Che Adams. If they do start 4-4-2, it'd be interesting to see who plays alongside what sort of partnership it is, because I think if Mara and Armstrong together, the pace and the athleticism those two have, be an interesting look, and it definitely could cause the back three of Tottenham problems. But Everton versus Chelsea, I think this is a game to watch out for. I'm going to go for the upset here. I don't rate what Chelsea have done. I just don't see the firepower in the team, and like we said earlier, Chilwell and James are really good assets, because I think if Chelsea are going to get off to a good start, they're going to be relying on their wing backs to, give them a, output attacking wise. I think Everton have made some good signings, some kind of under the radar signings as well. I think James Tarkowski is a great sort of pickup on a free in terms of the leadership and experience he has. I think going forward, Dwight McNeil, I do find him a bit of an interesting player. I haven't rated him all too highly in the past, but I definitely think it's a decent pickup for Everton in terms of the creativity. I think Everton are going to kick off really well here. I think Frank's going to get revenge over Chelsea, and I'm going to go 2-1 Everton.
To be fair, mate, I have to agree. I think I don't agree with Everton winning, but I agree they've made some decent signings where they need to. Obviously, Vinagre as a fullback, they needed definitely to boost. The Tarkowski, I think, is a very solid signing. Dwight McNeil, good signing, is going to obviously have that bond with Tarkowski already, etc. Scored a couple on the weekend, and obviously, I think they're going to be better this year. But I don't know to which degree. Obviously, Lampard would have had a whole pre-season to work with players, which is huge in the preparation for the football season. And I think Everton put up a good fight. I think I'm actually.
You're going to go with me 2-1 and Everton, aren't you?
I'm going to actually have to agree. I'm going to go 2-1 Everton, yeah. It's just that Goodison crowd as well. I think if it was at Stamford Bridge, I would have said 2-1 Chelsea. But that Goodison crowd basically made them survive last year.
Yeah, and I still think Everton could get rolled over. I still think they're lacking in that sort of central area of the park. But I just don't see where Chelsea are going to get goals this season. I find it really difficult. So, yeah, I just feel like that's going to probably be the upset of the weekend. Sunday, Leicester against Brentford in a game which I think kind of people forget about. I think it's a really good fixture for both teams. I think Tony's definitely an option because, you know, Leicester, especially with Fofana potentially going out the door to Chelsea, you know, I think they're a bit weak defensively still. And on the other hand, I think going forward, Leicester have still kind of got that sort of talent, especially with James Maddison still being there. And if he is still there, I expect him to have an impact. I'm going to go 1-1 here.
I think Leicester, they've been a weird team in a transfer window. They haven't really brought anyone in. They have obviously still got their key players, which I didn't think they'd have. I did not think they'd have Tielemans still, that's for sure. Schmeichel looks like he's on his way out, but that's only if Leicester can get a new keeper in. Brentford, they started last year well. I think they're going to do the same again, so I'm going to go 2-1 Brentford.
Yeah, I do like a Brentford sort of win pick here. I just worry about them creativity. I think Eriksen, brought a lot to that team in the midfield, and seeing him in pre-season for United, I can see sort of what they're going to be missing now this year, and I think he's a big miss for them. But yeah, I still think they could have a pretty strong season. I see a lot of people seeing them go down. I find that kind of hard to see at this moment in time. United versus Brighton, I feel quite confident actually going into this game, despite United not really showing too much in pre-season to be, I guess, over the moon with. I think with Erik ten Hag, new manager bounce, I just think Old Trafford's going to be absolutely rocking for the opening day of the season. I guess you could say, look at the last game between United and Brighton, and Brighton kind of bent us over 4-0. But I think this is a different era for the United team, and I think the starting lineup's going to be a lot different to what we saw last year. I'm hoping we don't see McTominay and Fred, because I do think that would be a big hindrance. I think we've looked a lot better when we go to a three-man midfield instead of the 4-3-2-1. 4-2-3-1, yeah. It's kind of a tough one, but I'm gonna go United to get a 3-0 victory.
Yeah, last year obviously we did see Brighton turn you over. They've lost big two players in. Actually, no, they didn't lose Kukure yet. They lost Basuma, which he was huge in their midfield. They have made a couple of resolute signings, which I do like. Obviously, they're going to have some players back as well, which is vital. But I don't think it's going to be enough to beat you, especially as you are at home, and that Old Trafford crowd will be bouncing. New style of football, new manager, a few new players. I do think you win. I'm going to say I think you win 2-0. 2-0, I think you win.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, this is the game of the weekend now. West Ham versus Man City, the final game of game week 1. And my head tells me that City are too good for them, and they're going to keep the ball, and they're going to make it look kind of, not easy, but they're going to do it in fashion. I think they could get, sort of a 2-0 victory here and keep the ball. But I have a feeling And I just, even though I've got City assets in my team, I have a feeling West Ham are going to upset them. I think their performance for City was really poor in the Community Shield. And I think with Haaland up front, it's a bit of a weird one at this moment in time because they're so used to playing with that sort of false nine sort of system and having a player to play balls into feet with. And, Haaland's looking to go in behind. And I think, they lost a lot of sort of chances, and they didn't keep the ball as well as I think they could have against Liverpool, and I think they're going to struggle here again. This is just a feeling. I'm going to go West Ham 2-1. I think Jared Bowen gets a winner late on.
See, they did go 2-0 up last year towards the end of the season, so he did come back and miss a penalty. I just think City are going to want to start strong. They're going to want to obviously put the Community Shield behind them, which they did lose, first bit of silverware.
Yeah, I think away from home as well. The way to West Ham's a really tough first game.
Yeah, I think it is a tough first game, but I do think they'll win. I think they'll win 2-0, to be honest.
Fair enough. I do think, it's a great game week 1 in terms of fixtures. I really cannot wait for it to come round now. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment down below letting us what sort of fantasy asset me and Rod might be missing out on in our team, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. Me and Rod are going to be doing our Premier League predictions at some point this week whenever we're both free, so be sure to do that. We're going to be doing our table, top goal scorer, first manager to get sacked, and much more. As always, guys, have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.